We are sponsored by A.B. Spry and Family and by Michal Avram Chavin. We thank you very much.
This was supposed to come to you, I think.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. Let's get this going. Okay, this is going. Okay, excellent. As we welcome in Dr. Block, and we welcome in Aaron Swade, and we welcome in Yitzi Muller, and Yitzi Fuchs, and Saba, and Irving Fishbaum, and Mel Zachter, and we welcome in Nachman Chapler, Mark Frankel, Stephen Holtzman, Shelley Zeitlin, Michal, Eddie Chazan, Shimon Deer, Menachem Yemansky, Richard Rosenzweig, Moshe Lehman, Yudah from Yerushalayim, Ilya Shutman, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, Abe Arbach, Naftali Jablin, Chaim Braun, and here in the shul we have, after a Shavuos, Besh Gesseman and Gedalia Engel, Michal Avram, Reb Halpert. It's good to have you, and David Helfgott joining us on Kol Lashon. We are holding by. We have a tough piece of Gemara to start with, and the Gemara then gets easier. We learn, of course, to be mekayim the mitzvah v'dibar tabam la'asais nachas ruach liyotzreinu. Hi Iska. If you remember, here we have a business arrangement where I give Mark chesets to take to other places.
Where are we starting at?
We are starting on Daf Kuf Daled Amid Beis, and we are holding by Imre Nardoi 7 lines from the bottom. 7 lines from the bottom of Daf Kuf Daled Amid Beis. So the Gemara says, we're talking about an Iska, so I give Mark, let's say, chess sets, where he's going to sell them in places where they're, of course, more expensive, and we're going to split the profit. I am the investor, and he is the managing partner of the arrangement, because, of course, I'm supplying the chess set and he's supplying the work. And the way we construct the arrangement is that he accepts half of the responsibility of loss, and I accept half the responsibility. And that's called Chatzi Pikodon Chatzi Milva. It's like a half a deposit and a half of a loan. So the part that's the loan, Mark is responsible if there's a loss, and the half a deposit, I am responsible for the loss. Now the problem is that since he's managing the entire investment, so then that the fact that Mark is managing my half would seem to be interest on the half that I advance him as a loan. And therefore, in order to offset that, a lot of times Mark gets more of the profit to offset the fact that he's managing the entire investment. So instead of getting a half of the profit, he'll get 2/3 of the profit. So the Gemara starts talking about different aspects of such an arrangement. So Imre Nardai, Hi Iska, this business arrangement, Palga Milva or Palga Pikadon. It's construed as a half a loan, half a deposit. Ovid Rabbanan Milsa, the Rabbanan constructed it in a way, the Nechalei L'Loiva, that it's good for the it's good for the managing partner, Mark, but Nechalei L'Milva, and also good for the investor. In other words, that we split the responsibility. We split if there's a loss. Now, Hashta Damrin on Palga Milva, now that we say that half of this arrangement is a loan. So therefore, if let's say I advance him money to invest, if he wants to use half of the money to buy beer, to go to the bar, he can. If he wants to use his half to go to the bar, shaperdami, he can. So Rava says, no, he can't. That's why the whole arrangement is called an iska, a business venture. It all has to be dedicated to the... I'm sorry, Mark. Here, Mark had, delusions of grandeur that he was going to, hit the town. Rav Amalachi korele iska, that's why it's called a business venture. The Amaleki yoivdolach, when I gave it to you, liyasuke bei, I gave it to you for the joint venture, v'loy lemishte bei shikra, and not to have a good time at the bar, even the half that is construed as a loan. Now, Amar Ravidi Baravin, now not Mark Chas v'shalom, but if I did the investment with Chatzkel, the imace, if Chatzkel dies, the half that's a loiva, the half that's a loan, nase metaltal and eitzel banav, it becomes like movables by his children, and unless Chatzkel left real estate, I can't collect it from the children because metaltal ediyasme loy mishtabde. So Rava again says, no, I'm sorry. Rava amalahachi korele iska. Again, it's called a business venture. The imaze, if he dies, lo yasa metaltal eitzel banav, it's not considered to be simply movables by the assignment, and rather I could take it even if the person that I gave it to, the managing partner, dies. Now, Amar Rava, chada iska utrei shtore. If it was one investment, but it was broken down to two shtores. What I did is I gave Mark Staunton chess sets and small magnetic chess sets. The Staunton chess sets were very, expensive, mahogany boards and everything. And I also gave him small magnetic chess sets. It was one venture, but I constructed it with two separate stars. There was a star detailing the magnetic chess set, and there was a star detailing the Staunton chess sets. So over there we say pseida de malva. If by doing it with two stars, there's a loss to the investing partner. There's a loss to me. Now, the Rashi explains this as follows. You see, let's say in the selling of the Staunton chess sets, let's say in the selling of the Staunton chess sets, there was a loss, and in the selling of the magnetic chess sets, there was a profit. Right? There's a loss in one and a profit in the other. So the article gives us numbers to understand this. What happened is that the Staunton chess sets were $500, and the magnetic chess sets there are many more magnetic chess sets. They were also $500, right? So it's 500 and 500, and the article says 50 and 50. Let's say the example of 50 and 50, and at the end of the at the end there was a loss, and instead of it being worth 100, it's now worth 80. So there was a loss of 20. Now, Oh, welcome, Ruvain. Yeah. Now, so in this case, so in this case, if let's say it was written up in one star, and the deal was written up in one star, and the one of the ventures, right, suffered a 5 dinar loss. So instead of it being 50, it was 45. And the other one earned a profit of 15 dinar. So then instead of being 50, it was 65. So one was 45 and one was 65. Right? So now, remember, they have to share the loss equally, and the managing partner, that's Mark, we said to offset that it shouldn't be ribis, takes 2/3 of the profit, right? So the loss is 5 dinar. So the loss of 5 dinar would be a loss that we share 2.5 and 2.5, and the gain is 15, which I would get 5, and Mark would take 10. Right? That's the way that we would break it up. Remember, again, we split the loss equally. So if there's a loss of 5, so we would split it 2.5 and 2.5. And there's a gain of 15. So a gain of 15, and since Mark takes 2/3 to offset that it shouldn't be interest, that he's managing the whole thing, so he would take 10 and I would take 5. Right? So I'm supposed to take 5, and I'm supposed to absorb a loss of 2.5, so I would get a profit of 2.5. Right? No.
That's correct.
Right? There was a profit of 15, right? So Mark gets
He gets 10.
10, I get 5, and the loss of 2.5 and 2.5, right? Now, one second. That's if you do it as 2 separate deals. Right. If you do it as one deal, so then what we do is we say that since part of it suffered a loss of 5, and part of it gained a profit of 15, if it's one deal, so then we just look at it as a profit of 10. So if it's a profit of 10, so then what do I get? I get 1/3 of 10. If I get 1/3 of 10, I get 3 1/3. So if you look at it as one deal, the managing partner, that's me, would get 3 1/3. If you look at it as 2 deals, I'll only get 2.5.
That's the Bava.
Right, I'm the investor. Yeah, I'm the investor. That's the difference. Let me say that again, because I royally mixed you up, so it's okay. I royally mixed you up. It's really Mark's fault, but I won't get into it. It's very complicated. I would have to draw you a chart of how it's Mark's fault. But I assure you it's Mark's fault. But anyway, what happened over here is I gave him the 2 sets of chess sets. So if it was written with 1 star, so then if part of the deal, the stunt and chess sets suffered a loss of 5, and the magnetic sets made a profit of 15. So then we would just say that we deduct the 5 from the 15, and it makes a total profit of 10. If it makes a total profit of 10, and Mark gets 2/3 and I get 1/3, so then I get 3 1/3 profit. If we structured it as two shtaros, so then the shtar that says that there's a loss of 5, so we do that equally, 2.5 and 2.5. The other thing that was a gain of 15, so Mark takes 2/3, which is 10, and I get 5. So there's a 5 profit and a 2.5 loss, so then I only get 2.5. So by splitting it into 2 shtaros, there's a loss to the malva. There's a loss to the managing partner. And that's what the Gemara says. Amarava chada iska utrei shtare, if it's one business venture and 2 shtaros, pseida de malva. Trei iske, if it's 2 ventures, v'chad shtara, if it's the reverse. If it's 2 ventures and 1 shtar, then it's a pseida de laiva. Then Mark will suffer the loss. V'amarava, hai man de kabel iska min chavrei, if Mark accepted this venture, upasid, and initially the venture suffered, and Torach, he really exerted himself with the remaining funds in the venture, umalye, and he refilled it, v'loi oidei, and the bottom line is that I didn't even know about it. Maybe if he wanted to stop and make a special arrangement, but I didn't even know about it. But later he wants to tell me, Rabbi Weiss, I want to get special consideration for the work that I did. You can't do that. You should carry the initial loss and reimburse me for the effort that I put in. Because I tell him, you know why you put in that extra effort? You want Mark, he can only do business if he has investors. So he wants to have a good name that he carries through with the investments. So Mishum Da'amale, I tell him, Lahachi Torchis Lamal Yusei, the reason why you work to fill the loss and to restore it is that you shouldn't be known as somebody that wrecks investments. Mark wants people, like Eduardo, to advance him capital. He's looking for the big guns to give him investments. So he wants to maintain his name.
What could he do if he wants?
Rob, can I ask you a quick question? If we rewind a second, please.
What do you ask me?
What could he do if he wants to be reimbursed for that extra effort he made?
He could stop and say, you know what? We're going to, really it depends on the arrangement of the investment. But if there was no time to the investment, he could stop and say, okay, we'll divide and suffer the losses, right? With splitting the losses equally. And I could say, no, I want you to work harder. I'll give you a little bit extra percentage. What do you say, Eddie?
Rob, if you go back like a couple of lines, and it says, I'm reading like in my commentary, that if you have like a venture, but 2 different contracts, right? So that the investor loses 2/3 he absorbs 2/3 of the loss is what I'm reading. Do you see that?
No, there's different ways to offset the interest. You could offset the interest by giving the managing partner 2/3 of the profit, or you could offset it by splitting the profit equally and giving the managing partner 2/3 of the loss. That's what you're reading. There's two different ways to offset the problem of the interest. You hear what I'm saying?
Okay.
Now, Vamarava, Hani Beitrei, mute yourself, Eddie. Vamarava, Rava says, Hani Beitrei the Avdei Iske Bahade Adadi. So I make a business venture with Mark, Varavach. Now in this case, the business venture was to be, it had a term. It was to be for 6 months. And it turned a profit. And let's say Mark tells me, Taliflik, come, let's split it up. You know, okay, I'll take out my 2/3, I'll give you my 1/3. I wanna end the deal. If I tell Mark, Neravach Tvei, no, I wanna proceed, I wanna make more money. Dinuhu de Ma'akev. I could stop it because I could say I'm not ready to split it up now. We said that there was going to be term for 6 months. Let's go. I want to make more money. That's why I advance you the money. I have big things in my sights. The Amalei, and again, saying it out. The Amalei Havli Palga de Rafka, and Mark says, look, I want to take my half. Amalei, I could say, no, Rafka Lekarna Mishtab. In other words, let's say he says, okay, Rabbi Weiss, I'll continue investing your half, but my half I want to take out. So I tell him no, because the half is mishubed to the principle, right? So he wants to say, look, I'll keep what you, the principle that you gave me, and I'll continue to invest it, but I want to take my half that I made, I want to take. So I tell him, no, it's all one package. Rafka Lakarna Mishtabit, it's all one package. You can't take the money out of the investment. So here he tells me, you know what, Rabbi Weiss? I don't want to risk anymore. I'm very comfortable with the money that I made. I'll give you back your principal, and v'yamalei havlei palga rafka upalga karna. If now let's say the principal says, in this case I say, you know what? I'm going to take back half my principal and half of the profit. And you could invest, I'll leave half the principal, because after all, we made a deal. So I'll leave half the principal and half the profit. Amalei, no. Iska lahadodi mishubit. The business deal was done to be together. So here, what he says is, let's split half of the profit and half of the principal. But v'imati lach pseida, if you suffer a loss in the remaining principal, darina bahadach, I'll share the loss with you. In other words, let me take the half principal and half profit, but on the other half of the principal and the profit, if there's a loss, I'll share it with you. Amalei, he says no, because Mazel the Beit Trey Adif. I want it to be a joint venture because something that's a joint venture, you have the mazel of both partners, and that's stronger. So even though what happens over here is he says, look, I'll give you a good situation. I'll take my half and I'll take the profit. And you continue investing half with the profit. And if there's a loss on your half, I'll share the loss. But I want to take my profit now. So Mark could say, no, I want to have both of our koiches. Because when there's two koiches, there's two schusim, it's a better chance that the venture will be successful. Now, any questions? You have questions on this? You have a question? Now, okay, Mark is already making trouble tonight. So he accepts my field, and he doesn't want to lead it. He doesn't want to. Now here he's giving me a fixed amount, and he doesn't want to weed it. And he says to me, "Ma ichbes lach? Why do you care? I'm going to give you your 50 bushels that I promised you. What do you care if I weed it or not?" Ain't Shemilai. We don't listen to him. Because I say to him, look, you're leaving the field after this year. You're going to leave the field, and you're going to leave me a field with a lot of weeds. Now, let's say Mark says, Rabbi Weiss, don't worry. I'm not going to weed it, but afterwards I'll plow the field to get rid of the weeds. So I tell him, yeah, but if you're not weeding it, the 50 bushels that you're going to give me are going to be full of weeds. I want good wheat. He says, I won't give you the wheat from the field. I'll buy 50 bushels for you in the market. I said, right to the Mikavshalai. I want my home produced wheat. If he tells me, okay, Rabbi Weiss, the 50 bushels that I give you, those I will weed. So I tell him, people are going to say, I passed Rabbi Weiss's field, and it's full of weeds. Says, wait a second, that's not what the Mishnah says. It says in the Mishnah that the reason why Mark can't do it without weeding is because he's going to leave it and he's going to leave me a field with weeds. Now the problem is, but if he says he's going to plow it afterwards, why isn't that enough? Ella says, the reason is, if he doesn't weed the field, it could be that seeds of weeds would fall deep into the ground, and even if he plows it afterwards, those seeds will still remain and resurface afterwards, and therefore, if the minig of the makam is to weed, he has to weed. He can't even say that he's going to plow it afterwards. That's not enough. Now, right? If let's say Mark leases the field, and the field doesn't produce. So the question is, can Mark say, look, here is a case where he's a sharecropper, and he's paying me a percentage. He says, Rabbi Weiss, it's not worth my work. It's not producing. Im yesh ba kedei lahamid kri, if it's going to produce enough wheat to make a pile, then Mark can't say, I'm not doing it. Chayiv l'tapel ba. So Rabbi Yehuda says that's not a good share, because what would be if it's a very big field? A very big field that produces one pile. Amr Rabbi Yehuda, my kitzvah b'kri. That's not a universal amount to say if it produces a pile. Ele im yesh ba kedei nefila. If it'll produce enough that there's enough seed to replant the field for next year, then Mark has to do it. Tan Rabbanan, if he accepts the field and it doesn't produce, if there's enough to make a pile, because this is what Mark writes in the agreement. I will stand for honor and plow the Ezra and plant the Echtzeit and harvest the Amer and pile it up the Edosh and I'll thresh the Idre and I'll winnow Vukim Karya and I'll make heap Kadamach the Teise Ant the Tito Palga. You, this is a 50% arrangement, you take 50%, Vanoba Amoli, and I for my work, or Benafkis Yodi, and for the produce of my hands I'll take Palga. So now the Gemara says, "V'kama kedei lahamid bakri." What is the shear of making a pile? Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina kedei shetamid by hareches. It's a pile enough that you could stick the rake, and the rake will stand in the pile. Now, what if the pile is so narrow that the rake sticks out from both sides? Tajma Rabbi Yavul Didi Mifra Shalaminei de Rabbi Yosef Reb Chanina. It was explained to me by Rabbi Yosef Reb Chanina. Kol she'ein kainei shaloi roya pnei achama. The scooping part of the rake cannot see the sun. That means the scooping part of the rake has to be totally covered. Imar Levi Amar. Levi says shalosh son. Levi says that the amount is 3 sa. I skipped. Right? I skipped. No, I didn't.
In Ismar it was 12, and then you went right after the scooping facing the sun, and you went to the next line. I think you skipped.
No, I didn't. Now, Itmar, Levi Amar, the size of the heap is shalosh sa, 3 sa. The Rabbi Yanai Yimrei Sosayim. Rabbi Yanai says 2 sa. Amar Ishlakas Sosayim She'amru, the 2 sa that it has to produce to necessitate Mark from doing the job is chutz min ha'asa, is after you calculate his expenses. Now, Tanan Hasam, Pritei Zaysim, wild olives and anovim and grapes. These mean olives and grapes that never fully ripen. So Beis Shammai mitamim, Beis Shammai says they're still susceptible to contamination. Or Beis Hillel mitarin, and Beis Hillel says that they're tar because they're not edible. And since they're not edible, so these are, we'll see, they're stunted olives and grapes. They're not mekabel tumah. Now, my pritei zaysim, what does it mean, wild olives? Amar Rav Huna rishei zaysim. Now here, this is a famous Rashi, quoted by the Balei Musar all over the place. These stunted olives are wicked olives. Why are they called wicked? What does this have to do with wicked? So Rashi says because they never ripen. Somebody that doesn't live up to his potential is ripening means to live up to their potential. Somebody that doesn't live up to their potential is called wicked. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yosef u'Maikra, u'bnei pritei amecha, and the wild ones of your nation, Yinosu lahamid chazain, they elevated themselves to see a vision, v'nichshlu, but they stumbled. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Amar Mehacha v'hoylid ben Paretz, and he begat a wild child, Sheifich Dam, a murderer. V'kama pritei zaysim. What is it? When is it that it's considered unripened olives? Rabbi Lazar Eimer Arbas Kavan L'Kaira, that it only supplies 4 kav to the beam. When they make the heap for the beam, for the press, these olives only supply 4 kav. The Beirab Yana Yimrei Sosayim L'Kaira. 2 saw for a beam. Now that's a huge difference, because a saw is 6 kav, so Sosayim is 12 kav. So one is 4 kav, and one is 12 kav. That's triple the amount. So the Gemara says, well, pligi, they're not arguing. Haba asra de ma'ayle kura ba'ulala. One is talking about where they put only a kur in the heap of the kaira. Haba asra de ma'ayle tlasa kurin. And one is where they put 3 kur. So if the one that puts 3 kur, it's going to be 3 times the amount. It's going to be 2 sa instead of 4 kav. Tan Rabbanan. As we welcome in Mo Kushner. Welcome, Mo. It's good to have you. A good tavach. Mo, we just starting the top of Kufay Amid Beis. The top of Kufay Amid Beis.
Yes, Rabbi, why did they change those numbers? It's very hard. Yeah, you got to put extra numbers in.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get rid of it, but that's what they did.
It's very hard for... okay.
Why is it very hard?
Pardon me?
Why is it very hard? Just write down the numbers.
I got to remember the numbers. I don't even know where I put them.
Okay, so just write down 914408.
I did. Okay, let's see. But if you get back the old one, I'm so used to it.
Yeah,
Put a piece of paper with the number on your Gemara.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just write it in the front of your Gemara. 914408.
Yeah. Okay.
What?
I just say it's important to have a pen. Say it again, just say.
What's that number for?
They need a new passcode. 914408. 4408.
If you look on the chat, it's also on the chat, this number.
Okay. So says the Gemara, Tan Rabbana, Alu be'ilon shekoichera. If let's say Dr. Block goes on a tree together with Chatzkel, who is a Zav, and the tree is weak, or ubesaycha shekoichera, or a branch that's weak. Now, whether Dr. Block is on top of the Zav or he's below the Zav, the Rashi says, as the tree sags, or as the branch sags, because it's weak, the one on top is leaning on the one that's on the bottom. And therefore, if Dr. Block is leaning on the Zav, or the Zav is leaning on him, he's tameh. Nahechi dami ilan shekoichera. What's a tree that is weak? Imrei de Rabbiana kol she'ein be'ikron. If there isn't a size of the trunk, lochok roiva. If in the trunk you can't carve out a quarter of a kav, then that's a weak tree. And heichi dami soichai shekoichera. What's a weak branch? Amrei shlokish kol she nechbas be'echzoina. If it is, there's different gerses over here, but we'll translate that if it's hidden in your grasp, which means from a lashon of achiza, achizyonya, if you could grasp the full girth of the branch and it's hidden in your hand, you can't see it. It's so the circumference or the diameter is so small, so that's a weak branch. Tanan Hossam, we learned over there, Hamahalech bebeis hapras. If let's say Yitzi Fuchs is walking in an area where they plowed up a grave. Now, in an area that they plowed up a grave, there is a fear that you might step on a barley corn a etzem the size of a barley corn. Now, but Yitzi is careful that he's walking al gabe avonim. He's walking on rocks. But these rocks are movable. So since they're movable, because they're not huge rocks, and they could move, then that means that they could move a bone, sheyochel haset, that could move a bone, and Yitz is walking al ha'odam v'ala behema shekoichon ra. He's walking on a human or an animal that's weak. Now, when he's walking on a human and an animal that's weak, it's considered that if the human or the animal move the rock, it's considered like he's moving it also, because they're weak. So then, Tomei. Then Yitz is Tomei. Again, let's get the case. Let's say Chatzkel is a weak man, or is a weak animal, and they're carrying Yitzi, and they're walking on rocks that could move, and those rocks that can move would be macet, could move a piece of corpse that was plowed up. So if the animal or the human was strong, so when he's riding on it, it's not considered that he's doing it. And even though the person he's riding on becomes tamei from the barley corn, but they can convey tumah to Yitzi on top. But if they're weak, then when they move it, it's considered like he's being part of moving it. Now, what's considered a man that's weak? When he rides, when Yitzi rides upon him, and his knees are knocking together. And an animal that's weak. When he rides the animal, it's matila glolim. It relieves itself. That's a weak animal. Imrei debei Rabbi Yanai, we're learning a real potpourri of lessons over here. Imrei debei Rabbi Yanai, l'tfilo u'letfilin, for davening and tefillin, the shear is dalid kav, 4 kav. L'tfilo mahi, the Tanya, hanoisei masay al ksefai. If, let's say, Aaron, who we have him in mind, Aaron ben Sari, he should have a refuah shalema, b'sek shachel Yisrael. And we also learn for Dr. Kranz's father, who's Yotzeit, we learn for Shol ben Reb Chaim Zev Halevi, and the Neshama should have an aliyah. So let's say Aaron is carrying a load on his shoulder, V'giyazman tefillah, and it becomes almost shkia. He wants to daven mincha. Does he have to take the load off his shoulder? So pachas medalid kaven, if it's less than 4 kav, mafshilon lachurav, he could sling it to his back, or mispala. He doesn't have to take the load off his back. Arba, but if it's 4 kav, and that's already going to distract him, then maniach al gabe karko mispala. He has to put it on the ground before he davens. L'tfilin mahi, what's the story with tefillin? The Tanya, hoyanosing masi al roishay. In those days, they used to carry things on their head. So let's say that Menachem is carrying a load on his head. And of course, Menachem is a tzaddik. He's always wearing talis and tefillin. Now, today, we don't wear tefillin the whole day because it's hard to keep tefillin with a guf noki. But in the olden days, we wore tefillin all the time. So, you had tefillin b'roisha, you had tefillin on his head. Ima you tefillin roitzitzais, if the load was pushing down on the tefillin, aser. V'imla, but if not, mutter. Now, be'ezui masui, what kind of masui do we mean that's pushing down on the tefillin? Amru b'masui shel arba'as kavin. It's talking about a masui that's the size of 4 kavin. That's going to be pushing down on the tefillin. Tani Reb Chia. Hamaitzi zevel al roishai v'tfilin b'roishai. If he's carrying manure on his head with tefillin on his head, that's not respectful. Harizelo yisal came l'tzdadim. He shouldn't move the tefillin to the side. V'lo yikshrein b'masnav. Nor should he tie them to his thighs around his waist. Mibnei shunaik b'minik b'zayin. That's a b'zayin. Rather, aval kaishrim al zroi b'makom tefillin. He should tie them on his hand, on his left hand next to the tefillin shalyat, not on his right hand. He'll say, I already have tefillin on my left hand. I'll put the shalrosh on my right hand. No, the right hand is used to adjust the load, so therefore he puts it on his left hand. Mishum the beis shila amrei, no, it's not only zevel. It's not only if he has waste on his head. That's not the case. Afilu mitpacha shalahen. Even to put the bag of the tefillin or the wrapper of the tefillin, also laniach al reishi yesh by tefillin. Nothing should be on the head when you have tefillin on your head. Now the kama. What do you mean nothing? How small? Amar Abaye, afilu river the pumpadisa. Even if it's the 16th of pumpadisa, the size of a 16th is the smallest measure in pumpadisa, nothing should be on the head. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, my kids were bakri. You don't give an amount with making a pile, because if, let's say, Mark was commissioned to work on a big field will definitely make a pile, but does he have to work a big field? It has to be something that's proportionate. Mark has to work if the work will produce enough to replant the field. The kama kedei nefila, what's called kedei nefila. Rabbi Ami Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Ami says the name Rabbi Yochanan, arba sa'in lekur, 4 sa' for an area of a kur. Rabbi Ami dilei amar shmeina sa'in lekur, 8 sa' for a kur. Now what says the Gemara? Amalei hausabel Rav Chama b'rei Rabba baravua. What is it that Rabbi Ami said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan 4, and then Rabbi Ami himself said double 8? So Amalei hausaba, usually that refers to Eliyahu Navi. Amalei hausabel Rav Chama b'rei Rabba baravua asber lach. I'll explain to you the difference. B'shnei Rabbi Yochanan, their ground was very fertile. Havashmein ha'ara. It was very fertile, and it was enough 4 sa' to plant the kur. B'shnei Rabbi Ami, avikhisha ha'ara, it was very weak, the land, and they needed 8 sa'. Tanan Hasam, we learned, this is in Mesechtes Peah, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro. I'm very proud of everybody to come after a long Yom Tov, to come for 2 blada Gemara. It's really very nice. It's putting our shvuas, it's putting our action where our mouth was. We said we want to be mekabel the Torah be'ava, to be mekayim the mitzvah v'dibar tabam lasis nachas ruach yotzreinu. Tanan Asam, haruach shepizra esa'imorin. If the wind spread the sheaves over the leket, this is a problem. You know, the 1 or 2 pieces that fall from the reaper has to be for the poor. Now, before the poor got a chance to take it, wind came and spread the piles over the leket. Now we don't know how much is the leket. So says the Gemara, we evaluate how much such a field should produce, and we give it to the poor. Reb Shimon Gamliel says you don't have to evaluate, but rather noisin laniim kedei nefila. There's a predetermined amount of how much normally falls. The kama kedei nefila. What's that predetermined amount? Kiyasir Abdimi Amar Rabbi Lazar Yisem Rabbi Yochanan Arba'as kaven lekur. 4 kav leket per kur. By Rabbi Yirmiyah, lekur zera, does that mean a kur of seed? Or lekur tvua, does it mean a kur of seed, an area that you plant a kur of seed for a calf to that area? Or does it mean an area that produces a kur of tvua? And if it means that seed, an lemapolis yad, is that an area of where you plant by hand, or lemapolis shvarim, or an area that you plant kur of seed with oxen. The oxen would have boards attached to them, perforated, and you could, when you're using a team of oxen like that, more seed is used in a more concentrated, smaller area. So the Gemara says, Tajma, the Chi Asa Ravin Amar Rabbi Avo Amar Rabbi Lazar V'Imar Lo Amar Rabbi Yochanan Arbas Kavim L'Kur Zera, not L'Kur Tvua, but L'Kur Svera. Says the Gemara, but still you didn't answer our other Shaila. V'Adayin Tibayilach L'Mapoilis Yad, if it's cast by hand, Oy L'Mapoilis Shvarm, or if it's cast by oxen, which would be a smaller area. Says the Gemara, take your tishbi yatar, it's kushas v'bais. We're just going to pause a minute. Rabbi Sal already changed the channel here now.